Hello, everyone. I'm delighted now to move to our panel that's going to look at our private networks, the way forward for enterprises. And with me, I have Simon from Metaswitch, I have Christian from Air France, and also Christian from Siticom. So there we go. So Simon, I'm going to start with you. Please, could you just introduce yourself and maybe give us some inkling of your take on this topic?
Sure. Thank you, Annie. Appreciate it. Hello, Christian. Hello, Christian again. I'm the director of technical marketing at Metaswitch Networks. About the middle of last year, Metaswitch was acquired by Microsoft. So now we are coming into the Azure fold, Azure being the public compute area of Microsoft, of course. Obviously I'm making that transition now. However, I remain focused and will be focused on both the carrier side of the shop, of course, and more specifically the application of 5G networks, predominantly in the enterprise arena. So that's where I am focused, and of course this topic is near and dear to my heart because particularly as we're coming into the Microsoft fold now, the foundation of Industry 4.0 is really around densely deployed IoT sensors and control points that these must be served by highly reliable high bandwidth, low latency communications services. And, this is fundamentally what's driving the need for 5G new radio in the millimeter wave band, of course, in the enterprise. And, not only that, the application of compute resources in that area is what is actually going to deliver on those applications that's driving Industry 4.0. So both of these sort of worlds are coming together now, certainly for Metaswitch and Microsoft to deliver on this new promise.
Okay, thank you for that. And Christian from Air France, perhaps if you introduce yourself and your take on the topic.
Yes, I'm an enterprise technical architect in Air France and KLM about the critical wireless connectivity for the group and the world. And I'm also a co-founder of Association Agure in France, created in 2012 with some other colleagues from the railway in France, SNCF, and RATP, EDF, the energy. This association created in 2012 was to group all of the users of talkie-walkie of critical connectivity to make lobbying to the government and the regulator to obtain spectrum, because we thought at this time, at this date, we thought that the 4G could be a good protocol on technicity for the critical communication. Before that, we had the Tetra solution for just the voice, PMR, and also the Wi-Fi for the data, but nothing with the convergence network. It was the reason that with the creation of this association, and it's a success in France because we obtained spectrum for the private, like Germany, but it's in France it's 2.6 gigahertz to be able for each verticals to deploy the private critical communication on critical networks, like 4G on 5G on IoT. On in Air France KLM, I'm in charge for the deployment of this new network for the both airports, Roissy and Orly, to prepare also the arrival of IoT on Industry 4.0 on this kind of networks.
Thank you, Christian. Christian Freund from Siticom, could you say hello to us?
Yes, thank you. Hello together. My name is Christian Freund. I'm heading the department for 5G solution and services in Siticom. And we in Siticom, we have entered the business around private networks in 2019 as the German regulator has opened the market for private networks. And since this time, we are working very hard on deploying and supporting customer with private networks.
Okay, so I have a question, if I may. Maybe I'll come back to you, Christian Freund, to start with. One of the criticisms about the use of private networks is, and especially networks that don't involve a network operator, a telco, is around cost, and the cost being too high. I'm just wondering what your idea about that is.
What means cost is too high? It is the same question as what costs a 5G network. It is difficult to say. I haven't seen really business plans to or from operator for large deployments in the industry, where all the devices are charged like a normal SIM card, you know, or I know from the market. I know there are different prices for IoT devices, but if you have really a high number of devices in your deployment, then you have to pay a lot of money, and you are at the end you don't have any chance to move to another one. And it is the same if you use this open platform from an operator, you have even in this case you have to deploy your own radio network inside, because with a short or with a high frequency, there is no coverage inside the buildings where you need the coverage. And in this case, you have to build this by your own, and the operator will only operate this network. So the costs are more or less the same. The only different is the responsibility for the network.
Okay. Simon, have you got any thoughts about cost of public versus private? And is actually cost the point, or is what you're, you know, is the outcome more important than that?
Yeah, I mean, the outcome is more important, as you say. There's three ways to deliver these private networks. I mean, simply put, licensed spectrum, typically deployed from a network or by a network operator, and to do that, to deliver the sort of Industry 4.0 IoT applications that are really going to demand the application of machine learning algorithms and advanced artificial intelligence to the data being collected and applied to those endpoints. Yeah, you're going to need to push both the 5G core network functions, or the operators will have to multi-access edge compute to locations close, but not on the customer prem. So that's not ideal, because if the enterprise is having to push data outside their premise, then there's potentially issues with data sovereignty, security, survivability. You certainly lose gain latency when you have to move outside the enterprise premise. So an alternative to that is lightly licensed spectrum, CBRS as it's called over here, or shared access, listen before access. That could be delivered by the operator or an MSP. At that point, you could have those core components on the customer prem, but again, more likely they're actually off-prem. So you're really down to sort of unlicensed spectrum at that point. And that point you're delivered by MSPs or SIs like Siticom. That's the ideal deployment model, because at that point, both the network functionality that's delivering the 5G communications and the applications that are delivering on the Industry 4.0 services are delivered right from the customer prem there. And again, at that point, you're maintaining the control of the data in-house. You can guarantee the security, and obviously you can deliver on the low latency promise. The low latency is not just the radio access, of course. It's also how quickly you can process the data from those sensors and apply that data back to the control points.
Okay, so Christian from Air France, I'm just wondering, Simon's told us what he thinks the perfect deployment model is. What's your thinking and what's your experience?
With the deployment today, the main issues that we had before, it was the fact that the first private network was deployed by Nokia and Ericsson and some provider, but for public operator on public networks. It was not for private. One particularity of the private deployment, for example, in Roissy Airport, we want to have the coverage adapted to the needs. I mean, for example, all of the activities, operational activities are on an aircraft, a flight on the ground. Before the COVID, it was 70 flights on the ground in the simultaneous time. And we want to concentrate the coverage on each activity, on each aircraft. And we ask the operator, the integrator today, to deploy one antenna per parking, and after that we are able to have really the best connectivity inside the aircraft and outside the aircraft. Without this kind of coverage, it's not possible to have a good quality of the coverage inside the aircraft, and we need the usage of the inside and outside. It's really what we need, but with the provider, it was difficult, but they have to understand the needs and why we need this kind of subject, this kind of antenna. And they said, okay, we are able to deploy one antenna for 10 parkings. And we said, no, we don't want 10 parkings. We want one antenna per parking. It was really the first difficulty. But today it seems that it's better with the discussion, because the private is coming not only in France, but in different countries. It seems that it's better, but it's really, for me, the challenge is to be able to have a couple, how can I say? A couple with a provider and an integrator. An integrator is known very well the usage of the verticals. For us, it's the first way is the integrator of the push to talk, the PMR, because he knows the usage with the voice, but not the data. The boss is better to deploy. Provider, sure, because we need the technology, we need the network, but also the integrator knows very well the usage for verticals.
Do you think your thinking about the network's going to change a little further down the line with 5G, when we get network slicing, and then you will be able to use the network, in theory, per application and set the parameters for each different function? Or, I mean, what do you think? You're shaking your head, Christian.
Yes. No, it's really a good question. On a lot of discussion with Agure, with the operators, and in France, with the regulator regarding that, the slicing on what we... The first for me, the first step, when I receive the question from operators, I answer, okay, no problem, but we have 4 parkings today without any coverage, With slicing, okay, but we need the antenna on the coverage first. Without coverage, the slicing is nothing. And for us, we need really the connectivity, and be sure that we have the connectivity when we have the flight on the ground. It's not the case today, and sometimes it's the same. But why not, if they are able to propose, to hear us and to listen, in fact, that we need the best coverage. For example, one example is the taxiway. You were a passenger, I think, with some airlines, and you wanted to connect through your smartphone on the taxiway, and sometimes it's not possible to connect. We don't have any connectivity on the taxiway, and we need the connectivity. For example, for the next time, it will be the predictive maintenance. We need 5G, because we need a lot of data in a small time, because we want to react on the parking and to anticipate some change on the piece of the flight, but without any coverage today. With the slicing, yes, good, but please give us the coverage, and we discuss for the slicing after on the price, because we are a bit afraid with the price. Because today, when we ask an operator to make a coverage exclusively for us, they said, okay, you have how many users you have? oh, we have 10 flights on nothing. We need 1 million of connectivity to put a new coverage. It's really what I see today. No problem to start the slicing, but with some insurance regarding the coverage, regarding the connectivity, on which price. At the end, I think that we will have the common usage. Sometimes the slicing, sometimes the private, depending of our needs on what we need, I think.
Simon, so this sounds from what Christian is saying, really sort of business models from the operators and the pricing, the tariff structure, and also scaling. It all seems a bit out of sync with what Christian needs.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
is this what your model can address?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I mean, I think as Christian said, yeah, slicing, okay, yeah, it's a great addition to 5G core infrastructure. However, it's really valuable in this case for the operator delivering the private network service. It's not, you know, necessarily something that the end user particularly cares about. I mean, what Christian said now for a couple of times, in fact, is give me the bandwidth, and that is critical. I mean, in the business he's in, I mean, if you just consider a modern engine in a commercial jet can generate up to 1 terabyte worth of data on each flight. And obviously that data is critical for the ground crews to monitor the performance, to check for any proactive maintenance that's going to be required. So a lot of people in Christian's position are trying to get that data off that plane the second the wheels touch the runway. So they can start, again, obviously you're not pulling that terabyte of data off in its entirety, even with 5G speeds, but you need to get a big subset of that off and get it analyzed as quick as possible. So wheels down, you got 20 minutes to get a plane taxiway, taxied to the gate. That's time that data could be pulled from that plane and then start being run through the maintenance algorithms to determine if there's any problems that need fixing before that plane gets pushed back out again. So, that's the real life application that we're talking about here, and that's why that coverage is critical. Now, again, 5G is going to get you that speed, and you've got those antennas deployed in the right locations along the runway, along the taxiway. Obviously, they need to be about 1,000 foot apart, and that requires a whole sort of different level of thinking in terms of deployment again. But we can get that data off, but again, you've got to get it processed as quickly as possible.
Okay. And Christian Freund, I'm wondering, when you're talking to customers, I think quite often there's the tendency to talk about technology rather than outcomes. And people get very excited about the new technologies. We like shiny new things. I mean, what's your perspective on that? Do you feel like there's too much attention on technology instead of outcomes, or what's your thinking?
Talking about technology, you find in every company people who are very keen to talk about technology, but the most important guys mostly the guys who have the money, they don't want to talk about technology. They want to talk about use cases and cases where they have a value proposition of the invest. And this is more important to discuss about these cases, to find a solution who fits to the requirements of the company and solve problems, and not talk about only technology.
So is that your job largely? You're the integrator, so you're the people who make it happen. You're the people who put the theory into practice. So it's kind of up to you to be pragmatic.
If we have the opportunity opportunity to be in the game from the early beginning, then we are talking about also the business cases and the realization methods we can use to solve the requirements of the customer. In some cases, we are only asked to deliver the solution if everything is clear, and then we are only the system integrator to bring the technique into the company and connect the radio networks with the core applications and the other applications they have inside the company. But it's different. It's depend.
I'm wondering as well, our question here is particularly about the move to 5G, but I mean, in the last year, ironically, since we started deploying at least standalone 5G, there's been a really big slew. There's been a lot of private enterprise networks that are so-called 5G ready, by which they mean 4G.
Yes, I know.
I try to crazy. Anyway, I'm just wondering, do you think, clearly there's a lot of impetus already behind private networks. Do you think the move to 5G is going to really accelerate it, or what do you think? Do you think it's really critical or not? Christian Regnier, you're in a good position here because you actually do this, you run this stuff.
Again, good question regarding that. It was in our discussion with ARCEP to obtain the spectrum, but not only for 4G, but only for LTE, long-term evolution. It's really the protocol. At the end, we will be able to have 4G on 5G. And we want to be sure that the ecosystem is here. For example, some devices we wanted to have, for example, the luggage, the scanner of luggages. They were not compliant with the 4G for 2 years ago. It was not possible. It was just Wi-Fi on 3G. Today we have 4G, but tomorrow I think that the 5G is not for tomorrow. But sure, the deployment of this kind of infrastructure are compliant with 4G on 5G. But I speak about 5G NSA, 5G NR. I think it's really sufficient regarding the needs of our business, internal businesses, for IoT, for example, some other use case that we have for the predictive maintenance, for example, the 5G NR will be sufficient. And at the end, we will be able, we have to ask the provider to be able to have the both for the 4G usage regarding the ecosystem of the devices on the ground around the parking, with the parking of the aircraft, but also the 5G, if it's possible, where we need, again, for example, for the taxiway, for the predictive maintenance. It's really what we think regarding the 4G and 5G. But sure, the marketing is 5G. I had some difficulties internally to speak about 4G deployment. And today, I don't speak about 4G deployment, I speak about 5G deployment. But it's not really a 4G, it's a LTE. But the core are compliant with the 4G and the 5G. It's a result at the end.
So a member of our audience is asking, are we saying that airlines and airports need 5G coverage for the bandwidth to download the data from the plane so quickly, and that this is a definite use case for 5G? There's no other way of doing it. Is that correct? We need 5G.
Yes. We need 5G regarding the bandwidth for the slow latency, for sure, because it's really what we need today. Again, with the best coverage that we will have, we will be able to accept that. Yes, it's 5G. For the predictive maintenance, we need the 5G. We see a lot of flights on the queue, and really we need this kind of connectivity, I think. But 5G NR could be sufficient, and the 5G NSA could be sufficient, I think.
Okay, and another question is, why do you need a private core when private stroke ISP extended RAN suffices?
Yes, today.
So why does the core need to be private if you've got a private access network, I guess?
It's to do with it, having the access network is obviously just part of the battle, and as we've discussed throughout this this session, you've got to process that data, and it has to be done locally, which means you need a way to steer the traffic from the RAN into the local compute platforms. Now, the local compute platform could actually be the same platform as the 5G core components are hosted on. But that's the long and short of it. You need to be able to steer the traffic from the RAN locally. Obviously, if you're relying on an operator, for example, with the 5G core components in their network infrastructure, then that's the first point that you can start acting on that data, and that's too late in the for applications like we're talking about here, Industry 4.0 and the stuff that Christian's talking about.
Okay, we have another question on a sort of exploring this further. Are there alternative deployment models for private networks in more medium-sized enterprises and institutions? For example, hospitals or logistics hubs, perhaps, where guaranteed security and coverage are also important, but where there might not be the budget or the appetite to deploy a discrete radio network. Anybody?
Good question. The indoor, yes, maybe I can start if you want, but regarding the indoor coverage, it's for me, it's really a part of the global coverage as we discussed about an airport, for example. It's really a big difficulty regarding that. It's the price of the coverage for the indoor part. And again, it's another difficulty is with the public operator to deploy this kind of coverage on the indoor. I'm sure it's a big trouble for the small companies for the regarding again the budget and something like that. I don't have really the answer for this kind of use case today because I'm in a big company, I think, a main company, but and we have some budget and we have a lot of needs. It's really difficult to answer regarding but for me the DAS, the indoor coverage again is really it's apart. It's really a difficult subject for me. Maybe
to highlight, there are of course alternatives.
Yes.
However, with just a couple of requirements that have been detailed here, the coverage and the security, that's going to dictate the type of radio access that you use. And again, that's it's a lot of times you're pointing towards 5G with the SIM security, the ability for again to keep that in this case medical records, for example, local. If you're in hospitals and you need that low latency component, perhaps if you're doing remote surgeries and such like. So that's going to dictate the sort of the sort of radio access that you need at that point. Maybe outweighs the cost in some cases.
Yeah, also from the cost perspective, if you need a network which is reliable and secure for example, in a hospital, you have to deploy a radio equipment, and this is the most part of the cost in the whole game. And if the core system is on site in addition, or is somewhere in the cloud, or is somewhere shared with other ones, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter from the cost perspective, because this part is so low compared with the other one. The most costs are coming out of the radio network and the processing power you need for processing your local data for any other application. And
maybe
it's not good for Metaswitch, but this part which represents the cost of the core network is not the main part of a 5G network.
Yes.
Sorry.
Sorry, yeah, just a remark about that. I see the evolution of the ecosystem also regarding the open core, the open RAN that are coming on some other subject on ID like the band 39, and the band 39 is the free band. And I see some change regarding that in different events where I am, and I think that after some years, maybe, I don't know, some months, we will see I think that the price will decrease for this kind of coverage, I think. A lot of new products, I think.
Yeah.
And we have one last question, please. We're right out of time, unfortunately. But we've been asked, could you comment, please, on security threats for steering local RAN traffic to the computing?
I think that what you're certainly reducing the threat by keeping that traffic locally in the enterprise. Of course, the platform you are deploying on has to be secure in its own right, and that's obviously typical IT level issues. But of course, if the data isn't moving outside the enterprise, then of course you're increasing the security for that traffic by routing it locally.
Okay, Christian and Simon, thank you very much indeed. Great presentation, a great conversation. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes.
Bye all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.